Alright, so we're going to make pine sap epoxy. Basically, it is pine bark. Well, not pine bark. I'm sorry, pine sap. The sap just have bark on it, but I've got some chunks of pine sap. You need to melt it down over a flame, and once you melt it down over the flame, you add your wood ash, which I just got some wood ash from the fire out back. But you need something melted in. You could use a tin like this. This is my fire, well no, this ain't my fire starting kit, but I got an old tin. I can clean it out and use this for the wood ash and the pine sap epoxy. So basically, you melt it down, which I've got some melted in here already. Yeah, I know it's a spoon and it looks funny. But basically, you drop your pine sap in there and you have it over your flame. And I'm going to remove this because I don't need that big chunk because I know it's going to overflow. So basically you need to heat it up, and as you see it's already hard. And actually I made this horsehair brush for my flintlock, which I just blew my flame out. But the last video I made cordage out of sinew. Well, this is the cordage from the sinew. That's what I wanted to use with my flintlock, was a traditional sinew. So this is cordage made from sinew in the other video I made. And basically that was just a nice piece of muscle sinew from the deer, and you got to break up the fibers. So I used a small sledge on an anvil, busted it up, pulled the fibers apart, and that's what you end up with. And you make a cordage, and that's how I made a cordage. And right here is the pine sap. My camera could use a cleaning, but that's the pine sap epoxy right here. So let's get this show on the road. Get it heated up, and maybe I will use this just to show you how it works, how well. But it ain't gonna take no time. Now when you do this, you can add or subtract ash. I think that's going to have a variable in how well your epoxy works, is how much wood ash. Now that I can't tell you for sure what it is. You're just going to have to play around with it. I've got a kind of a dedicated needle here I was using for a stir. Good thing about this is it don't really stink. I love the smell of pine. So here we go. It's starting to melt. You see it's getting wet here. Alright, I'm going to set this piece aside because I just wanted to show you that it melts pretty easily. Melt a little more in there. Set this aside before it gets stuck to my needle, because that's what's happened before trying to make this video. As you can see, it don't take much to get this stuff to stick. So we'll melt it down. Just kind of trying to get some of this extra pine sap off this needle. Take a little bit of your wood ash. Oop. Sprinkle your wood ash in there. I didn't use a whole lot. So I'm just going to stir this up. Like I said, it's trial and error in how well, your epoxy holds, and how hot or cold is it outside too. I mean, if it's real cold outside, this stuff's going to harden fast. So I got this pretty well mixed up. Douse my flame here. I'm just going to lay this needle down here in here and talk to you while this while that sets up. Like I said, I'm blowing a little bit, but I'm going to just sit here and tell you a little bit about it. So you can figure out all kinds of ways to use it. The Indians used it for their arrowheads. They get their chokecherry branch, or their any straight branch they had. Reeds. I know they used a hard reed. There is some of the tribes that actually had a type of bamboo. But chokecherry around here works well, and basically you heat your chokecherry branch over the flames of the fire, and you could straighten your chokecherry and straighten out your bends in the branch. And obviously they'd blunt their arrowheads and use sinew to wrap their arrowheads onto the shaft of the arrow, and then use this method of epoxy for really giving it a good bond and glue. Epoxy, but it's already starting to harden pretty good here. But as you can see, that started melting pretty quick. You just add your wood ash and you're good to go. And that's your epoxy. And I'll probably make more videos using this stuff, but there you go. There's your pine sap epoxy. And I don't know how well I made this batch. You could try it. Let me know, let me know if 50-50 works best, or I haven't really tried a whole lot of different mixtures. I've just added some ash and it works well for what I use it for. But like, this is horsehair from our horse, and I went and trimmed his tail and just laid the tail this way across the bone and ran the sinew up through the bottom and around the tail. And then when you pull on it, it pulls it up and folds it right up, and that's what I got. You can kind of see, I don't know how well you can see on this side, you can see it, but there's the seam where I pulled it down through, and I used some pine sap epoxy in there and on the top and filled it in with the pine sap epoxy. But that stuff is hard, and that's all you need on something like this. And there's actually some pine sap on here. It's almost like a hard plastic is what it is. But here you go. Pine sap epoxy. Works pretty good. Try it out. Let me know.